then I think there are very few actual pieces of democratic legislation that would pass. Paul, next. So, the short thing then is that democracy is really everybody's hands being in everybody else's pockets. Or, as Friedrich Bastiat once said in a slogan which everybody should have engraved on his consciousness, if you government is that great fiction by which everyone tries to live at everyone else's expense. And we all think we can get a free lunch, and of course we know we can't if we thought about it. Well, libertarians don't think that that's a good idea to run society by having everybody try to live off everybody else. Paul? End of slideshow, yes, right. So, where we stand is that it looks as though democracy is really not compatible with liberty. That's, of course, because, in a sense, government isn't compatible with liberty. Or at least very, very little government is. And my test is designed to just get at where the problem lies with democracy, which is there. And so we shouldn't be as enthusiastic about democracy as a lot of people think we are. Let me close with a historical observation. Many of you perhaps know, but maybe many of you do not know, that the little nation of Hong Kong, while it was a little nation, right after World War II, Hong Kong was one of the very poorest places in the whole world. Per capita income unmeasurably small, practically. By the time the communists took over Hong Kong in 1999, it had become one of the richest countries in the Orient per capita. And during all this period, they were not a democracy. What do you know? They didn't have the right to vote at all. How did this happen if, as so many people think, you need democracy in order to get rich? That's something to think about. Okay. Can I ask you a question? Do I have a moderator, or shall I handle all these? I don't know whose hand went up first.
Well, you didn't mention anything about a Republican type of democracy, a limited form of democracy, as opposed to just all open vote on everything.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, all the restrictions I mentioned put huge restrictions on democracy, of course. If people have, for example, the right of freedom of religion, then the government cannot, insofar as the Constitution permits it, impose religion on people, etc. And we have a lot of those. I mean, we do have, if that's what you mean by Republican government, what we have is Republican government rather than democratic government. The reason for starting with unlimited democracy is in order to get people to focus on the democratic, strictly democratic aspect of our society, another aspect which is liberal but not essentially democratic, namely the political culture of having rights, which is part of the point of this is rights are much more important than democracy.
Or than a constitution, is that what you're saying? Is democracy or a constitution?
That is to say, having a constitution with rights in it is much more important than having a constitution with the right to vote in it. I think I do need a. I think actually. All right, let's see. Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking. This is something I'm quite interested in. A lot of times we get confused. A lot of people equate democracy with liberty.
Yes.
And they're two entirely different things. And
well, entirely is going a little too far, but very different. Yes.
Well, I think they're pretty much entirely different because you can have liberty without a democracy, as you mentioned, with Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And you can have a democracy that is extremely tyrannical.
Absolutely.
Violates just about every right.
If that's what you mean, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, like according to this Nolan chart, 0 to 100% economic freedom, 0 to 100% personal freedom, but libertarians would be up on the top here. So my idea is that this is basically anarchy, but the whole world should start off with 100% freedom of both kinds, and then by consent, you voluntarily consent to a democracy or whatever form of government that you want. I would personally just vote for a very minimal government, so that, because if you have just pure anarchy, then you're being prone to take over by whoever's the most vicious,
Well, that's what
powerful
people say, yeah.
dictator that there is. Like, you know, like in Somalia, the warlords take over, in Iraq, like the whole history of the world is
Somalia, by the
whoever's
way,
the
is not
most.
a dictatorship.
What's that?
Or Somalia is not only not a dictatorship, it really has no government. You're talking about Mogadishu.
No, but I'm talking
read up
about,
on it, too.
it was basically there's no government, and so because there's no government, the warlords can run rampant.
That's what people say.
And is that not the case?
No. Well, at least not according to Michael Van Noten. Notten, Michael Van Noten, whose wife was Somalian and who lived in Somalia for many years.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He wrote a very interesting book called what was it?
Law of the Somalis.
The what?
Law
The
of the
Law of the
Somalis.
Somalis, right. Very interesting. Do have a look at it.
Well, he was a guest speaker up in Whistler.
Right.
We had
Anyway,
breakfast.
his description of, now, what's interesting in his book is its description of a society which is clearly does not have a government in any normal sense of the word, and which apparently works and has been like that for, on and off for a long, long, long time. They have indeed been conquered by, for example, Italy at one time, and of course, more recently by, was it
But
Ethiopia?
isn't there a severe threat? Like, would you want to live there and raise a family with all these warlords roaming around with machine guns?
The claim that there are warlords crawling around with a machine gun is true of Mogadishu, where they're fighting for political power, but not in the rest of the country.
So some places they're perfectly safe.
There are lots of pirates along the shore.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
The problem with the pirates, I mean, why should the rest of the Somalis be concerned to prevent piracy?
But if we went there to live there and we built a nice house and everything, what would stop evil warlords from coming and just seizing everything? My point is basically that
Quite
if you
a
have
few things,
no
as a matter of
government,
fact, but anyway.
if you have zero government, then you're prone to being taken over by evil forces. So that's why I would
Which are
consent.
namely other governments, yeah.
Yes.
I would consent.
It's true that anarchy in that sense is most workable when it's universal. Yes.